Yo, what's going on YouTube, and welcome back to another video for The Division. Now, if you didn't catch last week's video, then I spoke about audio, namely music and sound effects, which was a topic covered in last week's official Division podcast when the team answered some audio related questions from the community. So if you haven't already seen that video, then it would be awesome if you could go back and check it out after this one. I know information is scarce right now, but if you're as hyped as I am about the game, then you'll be interested in every little detail. Anyway, that aside, earlier this week I took to Twitter to ask you guys what you wanted to know more about. And Chris, aka GT Ballistic 14, said crafting/modding, different factions and how you interact with them, functionality of bases, basically everything. Now, I've already covered crafting, modding and factions, so if you haven't seen them, then do go and check out the videos on the channel, but the final suggestion did catch my eye: functionality of bases. That, my friends, is something I have yet to speak about, and as such, today's video is about that very topic. So, bases in the Division. Firstly, what do we already know? Well, take a look at this. This is the map we currently have for the playable areas in the Division. This map is going to be split into different districts. That much we do know. We also know, if you saw my video a while back on influence, that within these districts you can reclaim control of key zones, like police stations, power plants, etc., in order to trigger effects in the surrounding area. Namely, the police patrolling to make it safer, power coming back on, water flowing back through, etc. We also know that the Division will have social or hub zones, which are akin to towns or base camps you'd come to expect in MMOs. We don't yet know exactly what you'll do there, aside from encounter other players, but I speculated that you'll most likely encounter a number of different NPCs that you can trade with, potentially buy weapon upgrades, etc. However, in addition to all of this, each district will have a base. Now, whether or not the base and the hub zone are one and the same does of course still remain to be seen, but what we do know about bases is that they can and will need to be upgraded. In an interview with GameSpot last year, Ryan Barnard, game director, spoke briefly about bases, and here's what he had to say. So, you know the streets, but you don't necessarily know the status of the street, what's happening there, those kind of things. So as you upgrade the modules in your base, you get more information about what's happening in the surrounding district. So, in order to know more about the area around you, bases need to be upgraded, and in turn things will open up. But what sort of things? Well, think of it like an MMO. You encounter a new area or a new town, somewhere you've never been before, and suddenly quest markers pop up. Or think of it like an RTS. You send your scout units off into the distance to look around, but then you build a radar and your field of vision opens up. Suddenly you can see more, and in turn you know more. However, do note that RTS comparison, see that simply as a mechanic to explain how upgrading a base affords you more intel. The Division will not have a fog of war mechanic. Ryan clearly stated this. After all, you're government agents, you know the area, fog of war wouldn't make sense. So, in the Division, it's more likely that the more you upgrade your base, the more quest or mission opportunities open up. Similarly, if the cleaners are roaming the streets, or if a police station is under fire, you'd likely be notified. However, when you enter a new district for the first time, you'll need to fight to stake your claim on the base. Take this scene for example. There's a battle that takes place outside this large building, but once it finishes and the camera pans up, you can see this. Firstly, on the right it says Base of Operations Midtown South. Below that it says Security Level, Morale, Contamination, Progression, and dotted around the area you see things like Armory, Operational, Supply Line, Connected, and then below that it says Power Level, Personnel, Travel Connections, and then below all of that it says Trade Station, not operational, Medical, not operational. So immediately you begin to see, upon simply reclaiming a base, you are already presented with a wide range of tasks. You can see these as missions that will be immediately available. But then the more you upgrade, the more you know, and the more missions you'll uncover outside your base. Let's just take a second to talk about some of those base options. So firstly, under the main base title, we have Security Level. We already know, having spoken about this in the Influence video, that if you reclaim a police station, police will begin patrolling the vicinity. So I imagine that would add to the security level. You then have Morale, which would indicate that your base of operations is populated by potentially large groups of civilians. Maybe that means we'll need to do certain missions to keep them happy, or perhaps their morale is simply tied to the quality and the status of the base, i.e. food, running water, electricity, etc. You then have Contamination and Progression. I would imagine Contamination refers to the overall status of the district, so you would likely work your way through the campaign, gradually cleaning up zones and districts until eventually, I would imagine, you rid the entire city of the virus. And progression, well, that's likely an overall value that pertains to the completion of the base itself. Then following that we have Armory, operational. So this would indicate that that particular mission has been completed, the armory is then up and running, and in turn I'd imagine that means we can either purchase weapons or upgrade what we have. Under the supply line section, power level. Well, this ties into something else I discussed in the influence video where I mentioned in addition to reclaiming things like police stations, there's also power stations and water plants. So the more power nodes you restore, the better your power level. I'd imagine these upgrades have some sort of upkeep cost, so if your power is low, you probably can't afford to run everything at once. You then have personnel, which I would imagine are also integral to the operation and efficiency of the supply line. And finally, travel connections. So as we know, the Division doesn't have loading screens and aims to keep the player immersed at all times. So as you can see here, your fast travel options will likely come in the form of supply lines. It seems you'll be able to travel to key locations, other bases, dark zones, and maybe more. And finally, trade station and medical, both of which are currently not operational. This would indicate that the requirements have not been met or the mission hasn't been done. But the trade station would indicate some sort of trading mechanic. Perhaps this is how you obtain items. After all, when the world or the city is in turmoil and you are in this sort of post-apocalyptic aftermath, money has little value. Perhaps trading is the new currency. And medical. Well, I imagine this is either used to treat the infected, or perhaps you only heal so much in the open world. This whole idea also factors into the Division's end game. Ryan also said in the interview that they want players to have the ability to play endlessly, and that the endgame content is a big part of the Division. In order to support that, people need to be able to keep discovering things, getting new items, etc. So I imagine upgrading all the bases and claiming control over the districts and in turn the city will be no small feat. And perhaps, something I speculated in my influence video, perhaps controlled zones can be reclaimed, which would mean every time you log on, you need to check your hold over the districts and see if anything changed overnight or whether any bandits reclaimed the power stations, etc. And on that bombshell, that brings me to the end of this video. Hopefully you guys enjoyed it, hopefully you found it helpful, and hopefully you learned something new about the Division. And as always, if you did enjoy this video, it'd be awesome if you could leave a like and hit that thumbs up button. And if you aren't already subscribed and you're not already part of the Arekkz Gaming Nation, then hit that subscribe button so you don't miss a single video. Thank you very much for watching, take it easy, catch you next time, peace out.